Hello, everybody. My name is Beth Fisher Yoshida. I'm the program director of the Master of Science in Negotiation and Conflict Resolution at Columbia University. And I've been running these webinar series for a couple of years now. I can't even remember, lost track of how many we've done, but we do have quite a wealth of recordings on our website. And I know that Kirsten will be putting some links or QR codes inside of our Q&A and chat. And so then you'll have access to the rest of them. Today, we're going to be talking about peace building and social innovation. But before we get to that, I'd like to go to the next slide and talk a little bit about some upcoming events we have after today. We do have a very busy March. Yes, we do. So on Thursday, March 6th, we do have a information session, which is midday, and it's a virtual one, so it's online. On March 13th, we have another webinar about women's leadership and empowerment in peace processes in the post-Soviet space. What I'm noticing here is we don't have the March 5th. I don't see the March 5th date, but we do have, and maybe Kirsten will put a link there too. We do have a March 5th event celebrating Women's Month. And then on March 7th, we have a networking reception in Boston. So if you plan to be in the Boston area on that Friday evening, let us know, and we'd love to see you there. Oh, we do have the March 5th there. Okay, it's just out of sync a little bit. All right, so yes, the Wednesday, March 5th, it's the second one in yellow there. We do have that, and it's called Taking Space, Women, Peace, and Leadership. We have some exciting panels. We have an interesting documentary about women graffiti artists in Colombia, the Piranhas crew. And then in April, we have another webinar about organizational culture as a complex dynamical system with Camila Mascarate, one of our instructors, who is an ombuds. And then in May, we have another virtual session. This is our spring capstone presentations. It's one of the highlights of our program, and students get to complete a capstone. So if you have not seen one, please join. If you have seen them, you know you want to join because they're really exciting. Students do some amazing things. And then in May, we have another webinar, and it's the data myth, interrogating the evidence base of evidence-based peace building. And we have some interesting people coming there from a group called Peace Indicators. Okay, so that's it for now for these slides, I believe. And I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Itzia Moreno, and she's going to be sharing her slides, but I'll just give you a little bit of a background. She is the co-director of the Gire Lehenkaria Center in the Basque Country, and actually AC4, the consortium at Columbia University, and the Aguirre Center have been working together for quite a few years in partnership. I'll be seeing them at the end of the month, which will be fun. And her background has a lot of social science, big data, and business intelligence, looking at contemporary issues. She works a lot in the space of social innovation and in the digital world. And so we'll hear more from her. And the format is that she will present for 30 minutes or so, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion, but also we love to take questions and comments from the participants. All right, so Itzia, if you'd like to say anything else about yourself you'd like, and please start sharing your slides, that would be great.
Thank you, Beth. Well, I'm going to share my slides, but I wanted to say that I'm super grateful to be here, and it's a pleasure to me to be part of this webinar series. I'm going to be sharing my slides, and in the meantime, adding a couple of things about the center more than myself. Just for you to have some very brief context, we are a social innovation center that was created 12 years ago in collaboration with AC4, but belongs to the University of the Basque Country, the Public University of the Basque Country. We were established as an innovation center focused on research, but also practice. So in the last 12 years, we have been researching and getting to have an approach on social innovation that we think it's super linked to peace building processes, and there are lots of learnings that we can have between and synergies between the two areas. This is not a coincidence, because what I'm going to start is sharing where our approach comes from. This is, I'm not sure any of you knows about the Basque Country. This is the Guggenheim Bilbao. This is quite well known, but the photos that you are seeing are located in the same place. The difference is 20 years. So the focus of our approach, like the origin of our approach, is the Basque Country and the Basque transformation. Just for you to have some context, after the Spanish dictatorship, the Basque Country was undergoing a huge crisis, not only social, with large levels of unemployment, with drugs, of course, but also there was a collapse of the industry, and a motto that the best policy industry is the one that doesn't exist globally. That was a trend, and we also had a violent conflict going on. So in this kind of context, in 20 years, very short period of time, we managed, of course, this is not a story of what we did right, but these are the learnings. There were many things done wrongly, but we managed to transform systemically the whole country. This is a symbol. The Guggenheim artifact is a symbol, but we managed to transform the whole country in terms of society, education, economy, and even peace building. So what the country looks now, it has nothing to do like what it did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it is important to notice that the transformation that the Basque Country underwent had impact at the macro level, not only at the micro level, but the macro indicators of well-being, of Gini index, of education, well-being, were a huge change. So this is why our experience was unique and was different, because many of the places had similar circumstances, but ours was a unique case. So with Columbia University and other partners, what we started doing was to say, what happened here that made this transformation possible? So what we did was to take different aspects of this transformation that apparently had nothing to do. I will go here. Had nothing to do. Apologies for the design of this slide. It's what we got. Different elements of this transformation. Just for you to know, we have the biggest industrial cooperative in the world. We managed to recover the most ancient language in Europe in a time that that was obviously not a priority, with huge unemployment and social crisis. And there was the Guggenheim Bilbao, there's the gastronomy, there's social companies. There are many different things that apparently had nothing to do with this systemic transformation. But our hypothesis and our colleagues, Josh at Columbia, etc., was that there was a cultural dimension that made it possible. And this cultural dimension has a lot to do with how we manage peace building processes. So after a few years, our director had this PhD work on how these things related to each other, and demonstrated actually that the value system and the shared and the narratives between the different elements, super different elements of the transformation, were common, with sacrifice, autonomy, etc., but with equality at the center. That does not mean that this is nowadays the same value system, but that's what made this transformation work. So around that, what we did was, okay, we are going to try to have some learnings and to apply this, learn from our experience, and see what are the learnings that we can extract for not only for other places that want to apply these learnings in the future, but also for us to prepare our next transformation, because the well-being levels are high in the Basque Country now, but the level of well-being has turned us more conservative, and we are not that innovative. So today, so we are trying to see if we are able to apply this and transform our society again. So one of the first things that gave us a hint on culture, aside from this quote I have from Frank Gehry himself, saying that actually that's what made the Guggenheim project work and why it transformed the city. Apparently, this is supposed to be a funny vignette on how you can put a Guggenheim anywhere in the world, and you can expect the city to bloom and to flourish and to transform itself. Was to actually demonstrate how this is in Basque, sorry, but I'm going to be very quick about this. How the Guggenheim Up the Center was connected with many, many different things that were infrastructures, regulations, public policies, startups and big companies, cluster system, public-private collaboration, and of course, community actions and community movements. It was all of that that made possible the Guggenheim to happen, and not the other way around. So, with this perspective, we developed our theory of change. I'm going to share you the core components of this theory of change, and we are going to try to point out what are the learnings for peace building processes, as well as sharing some examples that we can get into later in the Q&A session. So first of all is that the social innovation processes, as it happened organically, but we are trying to replicate the conditions for it to happen in the Basque Country, look a lot more like this, but are not linear. That's very obvious, but it is important for us to start acknowledging that. So the first component that we are going to tackle is the ecosystems mapping. That's what you show in the earlier slide. But these are the core components, the core learnings that we extracted from analyzing our own transformation with a peace building component. These are not something that we have come up with. These are the elements that we think that social transformation, successful social transformation processes have in themselves. And the key is to reinterpret them from this cultural dimension or this cultural perspective. These are the ecosystems mapping, knowing what you have, the dialogue with this ecosystem or listening process, the collective sense-making spaces or collective interpretation of these information, of these perspectives, and the co-creation with different levels of innovation. I will get into these elements one by one. So first, we have the ecosystems mapping. In our experience, this is linked to peace building in a way that it allows us to surface actors and initiatives that are already existing and putting them in value, what already exists. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to see how they connect, how they present isolated agents, how they present power dynamics, and how this ecosystem interacts between things that are already going on and the agents that we already have. This seems like a pretty easy or pretty obvious exercise, but in our experience, it's not that obvious. And usually when we go to specific projects, administrations, companies, they don't have this this visualization and how this evolves. So this helps surfacing actors' narratives. What we do is to trying to keep the balance between the actors that we are mapping. That's very obvious as well, but trying to map not only public administrations, private companies, but also all of the societal movements all at once, and how they relate to the different actions that already exist at different levels. As an example of how to manage this, we have developed an open source digital tool that allows us to put this information into common space. This is especially relevant if you are trying to, in practice, communicate with different actors, third parties, people from the public sector, private sector that are or civil society that are collaborating with you. Our role is usually to orchestrate these processes and try to. Sorry if you hear my toddler cry. I cannot do anything about it. So our role as orchestrators allows us to have a common space with a common structure, and in real time we are able to put some informations and feed the tool with information that is structured in the same way. This seems really easy, but we have come a lot way, and in our experience, this is a way to represent a mapping that's good for peace building purposes and to surface power dynamics again and different agents. This is like a very short video on how this would work. In an example in Chile, this would be how agents relate at one moment of time with each other, and how are based on complementary capabilities, how they could be relating to each other. And this is what the digital digital tools can help us with, aside from many other things. This is another example of the food system and the waste system in Montevideo, because if you don't have these digital tools or access to them, you can try to draw them up. I can get into these specific examples in the Q&A if you are specifically interested in that. The second element, which is the one that is more tricky, is the deep listening. If we are applying the deep listening and the active listening techniques and processes that we have been working on to peace building context, what I would say is more relevant is that we always differentiate different perspectives of the same reality. If we do like a listening process with different channels, with of course interviews, but many different sources of information, what we are going to do is to analyze this information to identify patterns based on causality, based on difference, similarity, many different criteria that we have incorporated as well into the digital tool, by the way. And we try to differentiate like 5-6 patterns that are operating and that are very clear. This helps us in different ways. It helps us understanding in a better way the social dynamics that are conditioning our actions in peace building, but in any social transformation and innovation processes, to be honest. And it also helps us surfacing opposite perceptions within the same space to get the nuance. Not everything is black or white, nor yes or no. We have yes, no, and yes, and yes under these circumstances, and no, etc. So the idea would be to just identify this and also not getting or going farther from the public discourse. We have always the public discourse, the visible narrative. If you have experiences in peace building processes and social innovation processes, you will know that some agents, some of the key stakeholders, they will never tell you what they really think in an initial. There's always going to be a visible narrative, a potential public discourse, and then a hidden narrative and a meta narrative. This is an exaggerated example that we always use to visualize what is the difference. So this is related to climate change. I will go super quickly over it, but the visible narrative would be a person that goes to work at 8 a.m. in the morning and says, you have to change the system, not the climate. Somebody needs to do something. This is unbearable. We need to do something. But the same person at 3 p.m., apparently good working conditions, the same person at 3 p.m. says, unless it affects my quality of life, because look, I have my children, I have my life, and I have to take my car and do something and take my car, and they should go after the big companies, like what I can do about it. And the same person at well, it's 9 o'clock, that's a very Spanish hour to to have dinner, but at 9 the same person is at home and says, it won't affect me personally. It's terrible what we're dealing with, it's terrible what we're leaving to next generations, but this won't affect me. I'm 50 years old. I'm sorry about this, but I have to live my life. So this is the kind of things that we are looking for about if change is possible or not in these peace building processes, the core beliefs that the people have and how they are different from each other. And if we are able to surface opposite perceptions and within the same space. This is an example of, I'm sorry, I didn't translate it, but it's going to be very quick. We, as ALC, conducted social innovation platform or process with ex-FARC combatants in Colombia a few years ago. So this was in Caquetá, in Agua Bonita. And what we did was to actually with people on the ground, but with our help, to gather, to map this, to gather these perceptions and try to see the different views that the different people there on the ground have about what they should be doing to transform a territory that was so difficult to live in. Some of them were related to the opposition, or were defensive towards the institutions. Some of them were more focusing on the society, women, the children of the conflict. Some of them were super positive about the possibilities of the Agua Bonita and the area to change. So what I'm not trying to get into the example itself, but just to show you how these different views could be represented from lots and lots of information that we have transcribed, analyzed, and look patterns to from different sources. We get this and we bring this into a collective sense making space. Before we do that, I wanted to emphasize, just in case you're interested on how do we carry out community listening processes, we are usually use anything that we have, like obviously quantitative information, but also photography, photo voice, video, film, documentaries, gastronomy, theater, audio, of course, group interviews, local actions, participatory processes, anything that you think is possible adapted to the context. This is just a way to show that if we are tackling societal complex issue, what we need is different sources. The more diverse or sources for listening are, the better and quality of the information we will have. That seems pretty obvious, but again, in practice, once you try to apply this, it's not that obvious as well. So anyway, the third element was the collective sense making or collective interpretation spaces. This is the key element that we have learned from our experience in the past country and from the experience that we have had collaborating in different processes, some of them with a peace building component, some of them not. But in order to transform our place, this is where not sure about magic, but this is where important things happen. Collective sense making spaces are very difficult to dynamize, to be the orchestrator of that. Usually we use spaces that already exist. Depending on the context, we have used youth groups, uh, people who already have some gathering spaces, let's say, and create new ones. But the important thing is to not to punctually do these spaces, but sustain them over the whole process, over the whole listening process. This is the place where we look for compatible narratives. We are going to bring the different visions. We are going to have representatives of this different vision. And the aim of these spaces, this is really important, is not to convince the other, but to look for common points between the opposite narratives, to build compatible narratives, what we refer to as compatible narratives. So these spaces are apparently pretty simple. We present this in whatever format do you want to. That's not important. That there are many methodologies to do that. You can do photos, you can do theater. I can share some samples of how we have even theater forum, of how we have managed to contrast these perceptions. You can get as creative as you want to, but the aim is to present this to the general community being not only civil society, but also the ones that are empowered. This is another learning that we have. We have lots of problems listening to those that are in power, and we have to make an effort to do that. So society, companies, academia, all of them mixed together in a place when where they are debating the different visions. So the goal is not to say I agree with this or I don't agree with this. The goal, aside from surfacing these narratives and these opposite narratives in the same space and discuss them, is to say, okay, I recognize this pattern in I don't share it, but I acknowledge that this is something that's happening. That happens a lot with some let's say intolerant or biased views on, let's say, immigration processes. There are many things that you don't share, but you have to acknowledge, okay, there are people who act and think in that way in our community. And if we have this, okay, what we're going to do about this, but we have to identify this in order to tackle it, and we have to have shared spaces in order to discuss about this. This could take different forms. We have used a lot, because we are Basque, we have used food. We find that food in our experience is like a good way to talk about things that are not easy to talk about. Sorry. This is an example that we managed to conduct in Jordan with UNDP. We were doing a listening system, deep listening processes on youth and the future and the food system. Many things were arising, but there was like lots of elephants in the room related to corruption from the government, related to many different things. So we said, okay, let's gather different actors from the system. Let's prepare a meal in which the menu is going to consist on each dish is going to have a presentation from the local chefs that are going to say this represents like we had corruption soup. So, what are the ingredients that this soup has? What is missing? What would you like to add? And this is a way to actually prepare the path to talk about very uncomfortable things. Of course, it can go really wrong, but this is something that we have proven to be, and that we have experience with, that usually works well. And you can have like this is agua bonita on the right. You can have like yeah, like a common gathering of people and conversation. It doesn't matter if you're super creative or not. That's the message I want to give you. But the idea is to present these narratives and to make sure that everybody feels involved. This is important because before we get into the next phase, um, uh, um, I think usually another learning that maybe it's not so evident here is that it's not only, obviously this is not a quantitative process, but sometimes the collective interpretation of spaces can get super quantitative in terms of, okay, I am guaranteeing the diversity of participants in terms of, it depends on every process, in every social innovation process, in every peace building process. But let's keep it simple. Like I have half women, half men. Okay, but are these narratives validated in a way that you can guarantee that everyone spoke with the same voices, or with the same opportunities to talk in this space, or the usual suspects that are comfortable talking and taking the word, and the women were quiet? So these kinds of things we try to measure as well, and we try to bring this into our management tool as well. So we can measure, okay, so this we have done 3 sessions. These personas are being validated. The participants were fine, but the participatory balance is still marking red. So we have to go again until we have a participatory balance that is gives us the green light to go forward and say, okay, these narratives are validated. So this fourth element of the core component of the process is what we do about this. It's not just a listening process in which we want to academically know about the reality. We really want to know about perceptions. We want to contrast them, and we want to do something about it. But in order to do that, we are applying a portfolio approach. That means that we are combining different options, some of them more risky, some of them less risky. We divide them into projects, the 3Ps: projects, pilots, and prototypes. But it's just innovation level 1, 2, 3. So what we are saying, okay, you don't want to be like super disruptive. Everything you're doing to solve this, or to try to tackle this, is level 3, because that would be nuts. But if everything's level 1 as well, you are not doing anything new. So we try to keep the balance between the different levels of innovation. And what you can see here on the screen is that different perceptions of the same. This is about processing in Chile, but this could serve as an example of any process we're working on. So you can see here you have the cultural dimension that I shared earlier in the form of different meta narratives, different visions of the same reality that are deep and they are validated, and that we have worked on them. You have the systemic perspective, because you cannot only, you had to at least tackle these 5 different levels in our approach, which are the community layer, the public policies, the regulations, the small and mid-scale processes, and the large scale projects or public-private collaborations, etc. And you have to see um, what is our situation right now. So we have done a mapping of the what we have of our ecosystems. Now we have the different perceptions. So what of the existing actions are responding to each of the different perceptions? Because what we could find is that Javiera is, this is an example, but Javiera or Pablo gets like 27 people who think like Pablo have 27 ongoing projects that are responding to their needs and to their to what they need, to what they want. There are in public policies, we could equilibrate, we could balance that. But of course, if we go to people who think like Cecilia, there is a lack of projects involving, and we can measure if we are working only at the community level, only at the public policies level, but also if we are adequately balancing this portfolio or balancing between the different, even opposite narratives. Because in this social innovation approach that we are sharing, I think one of the key elements is to being able to prototype for contradictory visions at the same time. So you can say, okay, you are responding to people who think like Pablo, you are responding to people who think like Ellie, in this small experimentation, safe experimentation space that we have between innovation levels that are not 1 and 2. In these 3 disruptive levels, we can try to answer different. Of course, there's always limits, there's always things that you need to take care of, but the idea is and especially in peace building processes, this can be tricky, but the idea is to try to prototype or do something about the different visions of the same reality at the same time, not only answering to that. This is a learning that we have from what happened organically here, but we are trying to replicate. So this also visualizes how this balance evolves over time. So if we are starting a process in 2020 and we are at 2025, and the Cecilia, people who think like Cecilia are still not having these different these actions that are responding to their needs, we are not doing a great job. If we are balancing the portfolio, we are. If we are adding new narratives, if these narratives are evolving, we are doing a good job. And this is another thing. The way to evaluate these processes, of course, is developmental, but has other, aside from quantitative, other qualitative like indicators. Let's say most significant change perceived, changes in narratives, number of errors and what have we do to tackle them, number of opportunities for collaboration created, cohesion between the different actors in the system, etc. So this would be like the fourth and last element. This is an example of the work that we have been doing recently in Syria with UNDP as well. This was before everything happened. I'm pretty sure you're aware of the news, but we were trying to tackle youth inclusion in Syria under extreme circumstances. What we did with our colleagues from UNDP was to uh, make a mapping of what's going on, of what was going on at the time at different levels, what were the key stakeholders in youth inclusion, and talk to all of them and gather their perceptions. And with that, form like different patterns, different views of the same reality, different needs. Like, of course, the gender issue was pretty strong there. Like, of course, there were many different things, different visions of the same reality. And we try to, with this process, bring it to deliberative spaces and try to co-create new job opportunities, in this case, based on regenerative agriculture and value chains. But what I'm trying to say is that this process brought us to specific actions with different levels of innovations that were responding to different views of the same reality, in this case, youth inclusion and job opportunities for younger people in Syria. Then the next step was to actually prototype them. Things happened, so this is what our process ended. But I'm sure that this gives you an idea of the way we work. So this is basically, I think it's 30 minutes now, more or less. So this is more or less the work we do at ALC. We are now focusing a little bit more on the Basque Country and the next transformation. We are actually presenting tomorrow publicly how we are going to deal with environmental conflict that's pretty huge here at a very local level, but it's going to be super conflictive, sorry, because of, sorry about my English, but this is the same tools and the same core components and learnings that we are applying. So if you are interested, we can keep you updated on the future projects. Thank you for listening, and I think this is a moment where Q&A happens.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I did put something in the chat, so people please write in your questions or comments. We'll get to that in a minute. So I just wanted to have a couple of reflections about your presentation. Your talk and your visuals are fabulous, and they really capture, I think, the essence of the complexity and the amount of time and effort it takes to really capture a peace building process. I know from my own work in Colombia and Medellin, we do social labs, which are similar to what you're talking about. The ability to get the system, right, represented or in the room is tremendous. And I know that we had tried a mapping exercise to map different community leaders and youth groups. And then you get into the very simple question of what is a community leader and what is a group, like what is a community group and who's recommending them and who's recognizing them, and does it matter if they have one person, does it matter how many years they've been functioning, so all of that. And then does it matter if somebody likes them or not and doesn't want to acknowledge their existence, or what the power dynamics are, so those kinds of processes are really important but really difficult to do, right? Which I echo what you're saying about that. And then when we do the social lab, trying to get different levels. Now you can just talk to the people who always talk, and you can just read the popular press or whatever there is out there, but you're not getting the full picture, right? You're just getting a part of it. And if you think about comparing some of what you're talking about with the different government officials, the different civil society, the different grassroots, if you want to really make an integrated peace process that really sticks, right, that you can sustain and doesn't revert back into conflict, there has to be involvement from everybody in every level, maybe not everybody, but at least representation from every level in order to make it work. Do you have any reflections on that from your experience and what you're going to be doing now in the Basque Country?
Well, I think this is it totally resonates with any process that I'm sorry because I'm hearing my toddler crying again.
We don't
Between
hear her, so it's fine. We don't hear
the
her or him.
thank you for saying that because I was really
Yeah.
worried.
No,
I
no.
mean, no, I what you say just totally resonates with any process that we have carried out. There's always some thing that we are lacking. Like it's very difficult to have a perfect process in which you integrate all of these elements and you carry forward transformation and you sustain it over time. So I'm not trying to be negative, but this is true, and it takes. I think sometimes we underestimate the amount of work that takes. I mean, a listening process, because you go to, let's say, a government, it doesn't matter if it's national, local. They say, we are already listening. We are huge listeners. You say, okay, so what are you doing to listen to? And they show you like some questionnaires that we have, some blah 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 blah. So okay, let's do a proper listening process, and that takes a lot. And you need to create networks of people, and that has huge value. It doesn't matter if you are doing community processes for peace building or compassionate communities for end of life that we are doing. Actually, I mean, the network and the amount of work and the amount of work from specific people that requires is understated. And I think as a general reflection, we should take into account that if we are serious about doing something like this, we should invest in the things that are more intangible, and probably consider what a proper listening process needs, and what kind of capabilities you need to actually manage a group of people who think different. And sometimes if you are dealing with a peace building processes, of course, that's extra delicate. So yeah, that would be my general
Yeah.
reflection.
Yeah. And so in the listening process, you really have to develop trust and relationships, which is tricky.
Absolutely.
And you have to be there for the long haul. Otherwise, you can't like fly in and fly out. It doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. It kind of backfires if you do a listening process and people feel used, or people don't hear about you anymore. It's counterproductive. I mean, it's better
Yeah.
not to do anything. So yeah, totally
That is
agree.
stay home, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, one question is, how do you get people to participate so that you get more people than the usual suspects, as you say? What are the incentives for them to participate?
Hmm. Well, it depends on the process. One thing that I'm going to say is that we usually don't pre-establish a sample that is supposed to be representative. What we do is try to start with the 10, 25, whatever usual suspects, of course, because you have to start somewhere. If you do a proper listening process that's sustained over time, it doesn't matter where you start, but that's theoretical, of course. But what we do is to start talking to them, and then tell them to tell us who should we talk to next. So let's say a hypothetical environmental conflict. We are talking with the ecologists that are absolutely boycotting everything. We are talking with the government. So they are telling us who should we talk to next. So this snowball effect sampling gives us or guarantees us better participation numbers, of course, and that people are participating because they want to participate. Sometimes there are incentives, but that's usually not something that we do. And in this specific case, for example, what we are doing is to, of course, ask them we are gathering narratives. If you are super interested in let's say following the process, we are not only creating that I can share a digital space in which everyone involved in the conflict or the complex issue can follow the mapping, the interconnections, and can, of course, in a non-traceable, anonymized way, where do we get our insights, how are the actual quotes, and they can navigate through that and see where, when, and how did the collective interpretation spaces happen. And you give an email and say, okay, if you want to participate, this is, so people say this is serious, this is going to be this is not just another participatory process, because listening processes are not participatory processes, and I will be interested in let them hear what I have to say. So usually participation is the key, and of course there are, depending on the context, like younger people tends to be less participatory, but it depends on each process. What it sure works for us is not to try to establish who we are going to be talking to, and aiming at some ciphers, but just some numbers, but just say, okay, we're going to start here and let's see where the process takes us. And once that we start, and narratives start to repeat themselves, and we get saturation, we are going to contrast this. And in contrast sessions, we are going to be told, you are not listening to this, to that, and to the cousin that I have in somewhere, and you are not paying attention to the elderly people. And usually getting beaten up at the first collective
At
interpretation
the
space
beginning?
is a very good
Mhm.
sign, because they are telling you the truth. They are telling you what you need to hear to manage the listening process, and they are give you valuable information, people who potentially participate. So yeah, this is the logic of the process. But you have to start from humility and say, I don't know, I'm not going to tell you what you need. I'm just listening and just processing the information and orchestrating the process. And from our experience, when you come from this idea and this part, genuinely people participate.
Yeah, that's great. So as you were talking about your very organic process, I mean, you have a plan. So it's not that it's just, oh, I'll just go there and hang out. No, no, you have a plan and a process, but it is very organic. Is it a challenge in how you present for funding? Because a lot of times people who fund in organizations want much more specifics about who you're going to interview, what are the numbers, what are you going to have, and you're not quite sure, right? So how do you manage that?
This is the biggest issue here. I mean, first of all, when we start these kinds of processes, uh, usually the contracting and the administration part is like, I will contract you for a year. Please change the system in a year, which is not possible.
Right.
So of course we would need to 3 to 5 years to start seeing some impact. But that links directly to what I was reflecting about earlier. They all, no matter if it's public sector, academia, they all want to listen and to say that they are listening. But once we are not a consultancy, so what we do is we are going to embed these capabilities in your teams so you can sustain this listening over time, and you can dedicate people in the government, in your organization to do this listening. And they always say that's great, but then we get into work, and the amount of work that requires to do a proper listening, that to give value to what you are doing, the mapping, the listening, is usually understated. So yeah, and responding to your question, I think usually we have been lucky because we have done lots of processes with UNDP, with the Basque government, but this is something that of course doesn't give you a lot of stability in terms of the future of the projects that you might have. So yeah, uncertainty, dealing with uncertainty is definitely a thing.
It's part of it, yeah, for sure. And you mentioned a little bit about, teaching and building capacity inside of the teams that and the organizations, which I think relates to the next question, which is really about how do you interface with other groups and how do you have handover? Like, are you always there? Are you there for a certain amount of time? Do you then turn over the project to somebody else more local?
It depends on the project. We are coming from a place that we are certain that we cannot go to a community like the Guggenheim Museum I showed earlier and try to be, because we have worked in, let's say, Indonesia, etc. We don't even speak the language, so that would be absurd. What we try to do is to accompany these processes, to give the tools open access, to give the even tools that we have invested in, like the digital tool, it's open access. We give them other like training. We accompany them in the first interviews, in the first sessions. But the idea is for the to create a core group of working in the territory that we are working in, or the organization, whatever the context is, and for us not to need us anymore, for them not to need us anymore. So yeah, this is the I think the difference.
Yeah. One question here is asking something more specific. Have you done anything with peace building process between Turkish and Kurdish people? And what didn't
we
work in the failed peace building in Turkey?
we have recently, but very recently, started in Cyprus. That's not what the question was about, but it's kind of related. And we with UNDP, we are just starting, but they want to definitely do a listening process. Of course, everybody wants to do that, but we are struggling a little bit with the okay, what are the capabilities in your team, etc. Our experience has been more in places like, for example, Colombia, Syria. We also worked in Mozambique, and with Turkish background, or Turkish people, we have started something in Cyprus, but it is not even started yet, so I won't be able to answer to that. Sorry.
That's okay. Just the conversation that started though there, right? Okay. You mentioned that listening processes can be challenging. How do you get people to engage in conflict resolution and peace building when biases are involved? How do you navigate the biases in the process?
Our own biases.
I don't, it didn't say specific. I'm thinking
Okay.
biases can come from, yes, it can come from that. It can come from people in the room and so on, right? You can
Okay.
address any of that.
Okay, well, first of all, our own biases are addressed through collective interpretation sessions. We put, this is contradictory and a little bit provocative, but we always say that we put a lot of work into the listening and then it doesn't matter because you go into a collective interpretation session and they are going to, again, beat you up, which is good. So, yeah, it's a
I know
good
it sounds
summary.
funny when you say it, but I know what you mean.
Anyway, and the bias, this is the bias in our analysis. The bias in the perceptions, we are focusing on perceptions. So there is going to be a bias, definitely, there is going to be a bias. And it is important to recognize that, and it is sometimes difficult to deal with narratives that you don't agree at all with, but you have to present it in a session and say, okay, so this is what's going on. I don't agree with this. And many people, because we present through different backgrounds, people who are super educated, people who are struggling a little bit more, and it's very, very difficult to say this person does not exist. I'm representing this with a name and a, but I am not defending this. This is, of course, biased, and it is biased in the sense that we are going to be having different and opposite visions of the same reality. So some of them need to be biased. So bias is welcome. The what we do about it and how do we recognize these patterns and what do we do about this is what matters in this process.
Yeah, I think actually being able to surface the biases is really critical because otherwise you're missing a whole chunk of information that's really going to influence how you shape your intervention
Exactly. Yes.
afterwards. Yeah.
Otherwise, you have simplified versions of a conflict that's obviously very nuanced and yeah,
And then your interventions are not going to work because
exactly.
somebody's not buying into it, right? Okay. All right. So one person said that he loves your visualization tools and particularly the iterative co-design process. So the question would be, how do you bring in for-profit players like big business, startups, to look at how they can benefit society or recognize unintended negative consequences of their innovation? Example, Facebook and dangerous misinformation and so on. So maybe we're talking about social responsibility projects or anything else that people can do to benefit the communities where they are.
Well, a few years ago, we had a good example to answer to this. You probably haven't heard of it, but Iberdrola is like a huge company, power company here in Spain. It's actually Basque, and in Latin America, they bought Scottish Power, so they are really huge, and they are like the caricature of a bad actor in the system. So they came to us and they say, okay, we have in the north part of Spain two power centrals that we need to close down and we want to do a listening process. So it's just not us closing down these places, but leaving something behind and try to create this. Of course, we knew that this was greenwashing, that this was a communicative process, but we found some people in the innovation team that were actually buying the process. So of course we were having the collective interpretation session and a demonstration in nearby, and it was like a real conflicting process. But um, somehow we always try to guarantee the transparency of the work that we are doing. We always say that this is work that's done rigorously, transparently, and academically. This is something that's very once if you do that, and especially if you have space, it doesn't matter if it's digital or not, where people can consult and follow the real process in real time, it's very, very difficult to manipulate. That's our experience. And it's very difficult to control. If we are going to, in the next few months, listen to different actors, it doesn't matter if the commissioner of the listening process is the government or if you are keeping, and I will share with you in case you have some interest, that the digital tool to manage this, so people can enter just a link and say, this is related to this, and they can write to us and say, this is not connected to this, you should talk to this person, and then we can present these perceptions, and they can say, yeah, but how did you build this perception? And they can navigate the quotes, anonymized, of course, but and they can say, okay, but this has been validated, and they can say, okay, this collective interpretation says in 1, 2, 3, 20, 30, and they can see everything. It's very, very difficult for other interests to control the process. And this is what we are hoping, because we are getting us into a big conflict now. So the digital tool and the transparency is going to save us, I think,
Oh,
from
that's
this.
great. Yeah, super. We have time for one more question here. You mentioned end of life. How do you apply these processes for end of life care so people get a peaceful closing, both the ill and those who remain?
Mhm. We have been working in a small community here in the Basque Country with one of the experts in end of life care. Here we have conducted for over 5 years mapping and listening process. We have been testing the uh, community connector. I'm not sure how to social broker, something like that. The community connector role, which is starting to be, we have been conceptualizing that. And what we have done is to put the different perspectives of from the sanitary perspective, also the cultural perspective of death in the Basque Country, the labor conditions of the people that we have tried to gather all of the perspectives, and we have started co-creation sessions that end up in low cost funeral services, also the need to change the dependency law, but also community actions like death cafes that have been scaled to the whole Basque Country, suicide watch. I mean, lots of different things that happen in a small town and that are like a really good example of a micro process that has all of the elements working good. So I can share, actually, I can share a report on that that's in English if you are interested as well.
Super. Yeah. Just send that along and people can always reach out to us afterwards. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to say a couple of things in closing here. Your presentation was phenomenal, so much information, and looking forward to hearing more about the good work that you and your center are doing. Thank you, Itzia. Thanks, everybody. Bye.